Laudetur Jesus Christus. Vatican and World News.
In the headlines this Friday, the 15th of November, Pope Francis tells artisans that in their commitment they collaborate in God's creative work. Latin American bishops express closeness to the church in Nicaragua after the expulsion of the president of their bishops' conference, and at least 15 emergency responders from a civil defense team are killed in an Israeli airstrike in eastern Lebanon. In the Vatican, I'm Francesca Merlo. Pope Francis met today with members of Italy's National Confederation of Artisans and Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises. During the audience, he told them that artisanship is close to his heart and that in their commitment they collaborate in God's creative work. Deborah Castellano-Lubov reports.
E questo vi rende collaboratori dell'opera creatrice di Dio.
You are collaborators in God's creative work, Pope Francis told members of Italy's National Confederation of Craft Trades and Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises in the Vatican on Friday. Receiving them on the occasion of their annual assembly, the Holy Father began by noting that artisanship is very dear to him because it beautifully expresses the value of human labor. Artisanship, the Pope insisted, is a tribute to creativity, stressing the unique ability of artisans to discern a unique form in inert matter that others cannot recognize.
Che altri non sanno riconoscere.
This, the Holy Father marveled, makes you collaborators in God's work of creation. As he stressed, we need your talents to restore meaning to human activity and to dedicate it to projects that promote the common good. The Pope went on to remind them that what counts is not quantity, but the effort, and especially the commitment to make the most of the gifts received. He urged them to let their trust in God empower them and their work.
Con Dio.
Noting how the Lord involves us in his treasures and counts on us and on our responsibility, the Pope said, to grow in life, one must overcome fear and embrace trust. The Holy Father urged them to put aside fear that paralyzes and destroys creativity, saying we can also do this in the way we live our daily lives. Behind our successes, he noted, is not only skill, but also a providence that takes us by the hand and guides us. In this sense, the Pope highlighted, artisans' work can express all of this well if it is accompanied day by day by the awareness that God never abandons us.
Dio non ci abbandona mai.
That we are masterpieces of his hands, and that we are capable of creating original works because of this. Finally, Pope Francis praised their work for beautifying the world, noting that at a time when the news can make us lose faith in human potential, artisans' activities can comfort us and give us hope. I'm Deborah Castellano-Lubov.
Rome has become the stage for a meeting for all congregations and people from around the world who follow the charism of St. Vincent de Paul. With 160 institutions and about 4 million members, the Vincentian family have gathered together to discuss how to better serve the poor and tie the mission of synodality into their charism. Kelsey Gussie reports.
The religious family founded by St. Vincent de Paul, the Vincentians, have gathered for their second convocation in Rome. All congregations and people from around the world following the Vincentian charism are taking part in plenary sessions and workshops with the goal of fostering synodality and renewing their commitment to serving the poor. The theme for this year's meeting is Keeping the Fire Burning, Vincentian Synodality in Action, and it follows after the conclusion of the month-long synodal assembly in Rome. As Sister Margaret Mary Fitzpatrick, Superior General of the Sisters of Charity of Halifax, tells Vatican News, the Vincentian charism is directly tied to the Christian call to synodality.
St. Vincent de Paul was a wonderful man who gave us a beautiful message. What he said was, go out to the city streets and serve the people who you meet on the city streets. And so what we do is, throughout the world, we go out to the city streets and meet people who happen to be subject to poverty, to have other vulnerabilities, and we meet them where they are. And this brings us synodality to all the people around the world who are following the Vincentian mission to reach out and to make this world a better place through answering the call of the cry of the poor.
Meanwhile, the Latin American and Caribbean Episcopal Council, or CELAM, has expressed fraternal closeness to the church in Nicaragua after the expulsion of the president of the Nicaraguan Bishops' Conference. Bishop Carlos Enrique Herrera of Jinotega was forced to leave the country after accusing a local Sandinista mayor of sacrilege for disturbing the Mass he was celebrating last Sunday by blaring loud music outside the cathedral. Lisa Zingarini tells us more.
In a letter addressed on Friday to Cardinal Leopoldo José Brenes, the Vice President of the Episcopal Conference of Nicaragua, the body gathering the bishops of Latin America and the Caribbean expressed dismay at the news and said they stand in solidarity with Bishop Herrera while praying that he may soon return to his homeland. The 75-year-old bishop is the third Nicaraguan prelate this year to be forced into exile by the Sandinista regime after Bishop Rolando José Álvarez of Matagalpa and Bishop Isidoro del Carmen Mora Ortega of Ciuna. They were both sent to the Vatican in January this year following an agreement reached by the Holy See with Nicaragua for the release of 19 churchmen. In 2019, another Nicaraguan prelate, the auxiliary bishop of Managua, Silvio José Baez, was also forced into exile after receiving death threats. Bishop Herrera's expulsion took place while priests across Nicaragua reported this week being barred from entering hospitals to perform the sacrament of anointing the sick. These events are the latest in the long-running crackdown carried out by President Daniel Ortega's Sandinista regime against the Catholic Church and other organizations aimed at stamping out any form of dissent with arbitrary arrests and the revocation of legal status to several NGOs. The ongoing expulsion of clergy has left 4 dioceses without bishops and short of priests. Pope Francis has repeatedly expressed his solidarity with the Church in Nicaragua. During the Angelus prayer on January 1st, 2024, he again spoke about the situation of bishops and priests deprived of their freedom and assured everyone of his closeness in prayer. I am Lisa Zengarini.
At the UN's climate conference in Azerbaijan, a group of conflict-affected countries is pushing at COP29 to double financial aid to more than $20 billion a year to combat the natural disaster and security crises facing their populations. The group is one of several pitching at the climate talks in the country this week for funds to better prepare for the impacts of extreme weather as countries seek to agree a new annual target on financing. Meanwhile, a disaster in Sudan where people are being killed, displaced, starved, caught in a conflict that has caused the worst humanitarian emergency in the world. As Linda Bordoni reports, a just-released study shows that the number of people dying because of the Sudanese civil war is significantly higher than previously reported.
According to a new study published this week by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine's Sudan Research Group, more than 61,000 people have died in Sudan's Khartoum state, where the fighting began last year. Many more people have died elsewhere in the country, especially in the western region of Darfur, where there have been numerous reports of atrocities and ethnic cleansing. The 19-month conflict in the northeast African nation erupted in April 2023 as a result of a power struggle between the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, the RSF, and the Sudanese army. The war has created the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with many thousands at risk of famine and almost 12 million people forcibly displaced. Until now, the UN and other aid agencies had been using the figure of 20,000 confirmed deaths because the fighting and chaos in the country has not allowed for a systematic recording of the number of people killed. In a separate development on Friday, it emerged that French-made military equipment fitted to armoured vehicles from the United Arab Emirates are reportedly being used by the RSF. This would constitute a violation of a 2004 United Nations arms embargo, as well as a European Union arms embargo on Sudan since 1994. The revelation by Amnesty International comes in the wake of a UN call to stop supplying weapons to Sudan's warring parties. Both the Sudanese military and the RSF are escalating their military operations and recruiting new fighters fueled by external support and a steady flow of arms, said Rosemary Di Carlo, the UN Under-Secretary for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs. To put it bluntly, certain purported allies of the parties are enabling the slaughter in Sudan, she told the UN Security Council this week. This is unconscionable, it is illegal, and it must end. I'm Linda Bordoni.
Elsewhere, Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dissanayaka's leftist coalition won a thumping victory in a snap election, gaining power to push through his plans to fight poverty and graft in the island nation recovering from a financial meltdown. According to analysts, the sweeping mandate, which included surprise backing from the north and east of the country, which is home to the minority Tamil people, is an unprecedented vote for change and indicates that Sri Lanka is in sync on moving ahead. And finally, the war in the Middle East continues to rage on, and in most recent developments from the region, at least 15 emergency responders from a civil defense team have been killed in an Israeli airstrike in eastern Lebanon. Nathan Morley reports.
The strike near Baalbek wrecked the building of the Civil Defense Agency, which is linked to the Lebanese government and not associated with Hezbollah. The Lebanese Civil Defense carries out emergency services, including search and rescue work and firefighting response. On Friday, Israeli warplanes targeted Beirut's southern suburbs. Lebanese radio reported columns of acrid black smoke rising from the suburbs. Back in September, the Israeli military increased airstrikes on Lebanon in an acceleration of the conflict with Hezbollah. Israel also launched a ground operation across its northern border into Lebanon last month. Elsewhere in the region, Human Rights Watch says the displacement of Palestinians in Gaza has been so widespread that it amounts to a war crime. The document said Israel's forced displacement of Palestinians in Gaza amounts to a war crime and a crime against humanity. The human rights group said the displacement is likely planned to be permanent to make way for a buffer zone and security corridor. Nadia Hardman is a researcher at Human Rights Watch.
Senior officials in the Israeli government and the war cabinet have repeatedly declared their intent to forcibly displace the population from the early days of the war to over a year later, with government ministers saying that the territory of Gaza will decrease. In the areas where the military has raised, extended and cleared land for buffer zones and security corridors, Human Rights Watch finds these actions of the Israeli authorities amount to ethnic cleansing.
Israel, for its part, says it does not breach international law. Elsewhere, multiple explosions were heard across the Syrian capital Damascus on Friday afternoon in what appears to be another round of Israeli attacks, according to local media and eyewitness reports. For Vatican Radio, this is Nathan Morley reporting.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Vatican and World News. For more on these and other stories, please do visit our website at vaticannews.va. And you can also catch the latest updates on our Facebook, X and Instagram pages. Many thanks go to Gabriele Di Domenico, our sound engineer in studio today. In the Vatican, I'm Francesca Merlo.